Okay, everybody, here is a review video for the quiz that we're going to be having next week. Remember, this is a 30-question quiz, so it's not as extensive as a exam, but it's going to cover the media, elections, and interest groups. So go ahead and let's take a look. We'll look at the media first. One thing to know about the media's role in policymaking and government is they kind of look at themselves as an active participant. You know, they're the ones that set the agenda. They're the ones that say what's newsworthy and what's not newsworthy. They act as gatekeepers as well. So they see themselves as active participants. When we talk about the concept of military secrets, in order for military secrets to be kept secret, remember, you don't want them to get in the hands of the press. So you got to keep them away from the press. Know what the FCC does. The FCC is the Federal Communications Commission. The Federal Communications Commission is the regulatory agency that goes out and makes sure there's appropriate content being shown on television and on radio. And if you don't abide by the FCC rules, there could be a fine. And one of the only problems with some of this is some of this material that comes out, a look of it at it might be a little bit subjective. Like, it might offend one person, but not another. So kind of what, goes into the speaking of what we know about the FCC. Know what the Sullivan rule is. Remember, New York Times versus Sullivan, where you have to show that if somebody either libels or slanders you, there has to be a burden on the plaintiff to show that this type of slander or libel has created an irreparable harm to your reputation, and it's a very high standard to meet. So you can pretty much say what you want about anybody. You guys got to show there's an absence of malice, and you didn't have a legitimate attempt to try to hurt somebody's reputation with malice. So simple as that. Know what socialization of the media? The media tells us what is important. They also tell us how to interpret news, how to feel about news. They show us what is important through agenda setting. Remember, agenda setting is them deciding what we consume as far as news material. And they can also keep news stories out. Know what sensationalism is. Sensationalism is news that we're interested in, right? So kind of with that socialization, interpretation, and agenda setting, those are all key aspects that the media kind of does, but also kind of remember that we like sensationalized news, and it's just kind of the society that we're in. Like I said, know the term agenda setting. And at that time, when we talk about sensationalistic news, it obscures other important issues. So sometimes we don't really get in a view of what may be important, but what is juicy. Like websites like TMZ tend to do that. Know that a lot of candidates and also parties have websites. Also know that a lot of government entities have websites, and sometimes they're there to provide customer service for us, right? We could go to the IRS website and get advice. We could go on Social Security website and look at our Social Security future. And we talked about the FCC. All right, know the myth of the policy-oriented voter, as the author talks about, where he says that most people don't vote based off of a person's policy stance. They sometimes do, but that's kind of a myth that people think about. Know what candidate image is and how that influences people to vote, where we look at people's charms, confidence, ability to speak, and attractiveness. And those are the most often ways people use to vote. Know what a party activist is and how they are involved in kind of stumping or kind of advocating for their candidate. Know the terms realignment and de-alignment. Remember, we talked about that. Realignment is where one demographic group changes from a political party to another. And de-alignment is when a whole where people start dropping out of a group and become independent. Know what apathy is. People have a lot of apathy. One of the reasons that people have apathy, and we talked about the responsible party system, was that political parties really have no direct means of holding their elected officials accountable for not fulfilling campaign promises. Know what the median voter theorem is? Remember, in order to win an election, you have to move to the ideological middle to attract those voters without alienating your base. Know the Citizens United case, where the Supreme Court ruled that independent expenditures by corporations and unions could not be restricted when they are spending when they're spending money to either support a candidate or defeat a candidate. Citizens United says restricting those expenditures would be a violation of the First Amendment. Know who the Democratic Party attracts. Usually it's big city dwellers, Jewish people, African American people, unions. The Republicans are generally small town, rural, people that work in finance industries, gas, oil. Know what super PACs are and how they can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money, either to support a candidate or to defeat a candidate or to support an issue or to defeat an issue, as long as they are not coordinated with a candidate or they're not being given direction by a candidate. Know why third parties do not really get a lot of action in the electorate. Remember, they have ballot access. Remember, the Libertarian Party, which is the biggest third party out there, usually cannot get into really federal offices because they're only on 33 ballots of the 50 states that we have here. And they all, it's simply third parties fail because of ballot access. Just remember that. Know the participation rates in a primary election. It's going to be roughly half of what we see in a presidential election. Know what happened with Bernie Sanders and how Bernie Sanders was kind of screwed over by the Democratic National Committee, where they wanted to ask him if he was an atheist. They wanted to show his campaign to be unorganized, and they actually did give Hillary Clinton primary debate questions prior to the debate. Which is, like I said, which is like me leaking answers to a test to only one person in the class and everybody else to take it. Okay, let's talk about Chapter 7, interest groups. Know what interest groups is and how they're signs of an elitist organization. Remember, some interest groups are going to have an oligarchy at the top, and their demands or their values might not necessarily reflect the values of the group as a whole. Remember, we talked about the NRA. The NRA, I believe it was like 85% of NRA members want some type of background checks for people to purchase guns, but the elites in that system do not want it, so therefore it's not going to happen. Know what lobbying advantage is. Remember, former members of Congress who usually have the advantage because they have people's cell phone numbers, they know their chiefs of staff, they have money, they have access, which is the most important. Know who gets lobbied. Usually it's going to be members of Congress for the most part. The judicial branch cannot get lobbied because of ethics laws, and the executive branch in some instances can get lobbied, but sometimes presidents will put no's on that. And Trump was one of the ones that actually did that, where he wouldn't allow some of his executive staff to go and leave the White House and become a lobbyist. So that's one example. No, PACs give money generally to interest groups, and that's one way to become a successful lobbyist is to gain access and be able to give money to PACs, because PACs usually give monies to winners. Know that single issue interest groups are generally really committed to their cause, and all these interest groups activities are going to be protected by the First Amendment. Know what hard money is? We talked a little bit about hard money. That's money that you have to directly report. And also know that $2,900 is the most money you can give as a contribution to a candidate as an individual. And know what superdelegates are, kind of going back to the Chapter 6, superdelegates are unpledged delegates that have their own individual vote, and they, in a sense, can sometimes manipulate the election as they can vote for whoever they want. Okay, that's what I got. So just go ahead and watch this video, fill out the study guide, and we should be okay. All right, see you guys soon.